I'm Rosemary, sitting here by the window, watching the snowflakes fall gently outside. I'm reminded of how far I've come. It's been a while since that fateful Christmas, but the emotions and the lessons I learned are as vivid as ever. It was a Friday when my brother Leo barged into my office, red-faced and sweating. He was a few years older than me and had always been the center of attention in our family. His eyes were wild with anger as he hissed, "We need to talk." My coworkers stopped what they were doing, their eyes flicking nervously between us. I calmly said, "Not here," and led him to the parking lot. As soon as the door closed behind us, he spun around and shouted, "You think you can just cut us off like that? The kids are suffering." I looked at him evenly and replied, "They're your kids." He let out a sharp, ugly laugh. "Oh, so now you care about responsibility." That was when I finally snapped, but not in the way he expected. I take a slow breath, the cold biting my lungs, and said, "You're right, I do care about responsibility. That's why I'm finally taking mine back." His face twisted in anger, and he stepped closer, saying, "You can't do this." I simply replied, "I already did," and turned to walk away, the sound of snow crunching under my boots louder than his fury. But let me take you back to where it all started. I grew up in a small town filled with the magic of Christmas. The twinkling lights, the smell of cinnamon, and the snow-covered streets made it feel like a winter wonderland. I used to love this time of the year, as it was the only moment when I could pretend our family was normal. My parents, Victor and Amelia, were a complex pair. My father, Victor, was a hard, working man, but he had a way of always favoring Leo. My mother, Amelia, was more emotional, but she often used me as a crutch. Whenever there was a problem, I was the one they turned to. Leo was married to Lily, a kind-hearted woman who seemed to be constantly at the mercy of Leo's irresponsible behavior. When they fell behind on their mortgage, I sent money without even being asked. I told myself it was out of kindness, but looking back, it was a mix of guilt and the desire to be seen as the reliable daughter. Over the years, I've lost track of how much money I've given away. School tuition, utility bills, you name it. Whenever Leo found himself in a bind, I was there to bail him out. It was easier to pay than to argue, and they always called it help. But in reality, it was a form of control. Every time I helped, I became more and more dependent on their approval. This Christmas was supposed to be different. I planned early, bought thoughtful gifts for the kids, took time off work, and even baked the old-fashioned cookies my grandmother used to make. I imagined a warm and loving family gathering, filled with laughter and forgiveness. But when I arrived at their house on Christmas Eve, I was met with a very different scene. Leo blocked the doorway, and behind him, the Christmas tree glowed mockingly. My mother clutched her wine glass tightly, avoiding my eyes, and my father stared at the floor. I stood there, holding a bag of gifts I'd spent weeks selecting. Leo smirked, as if he'd finally won some unspoken battle. He said, "No place for losers." Those words cut through me like a knife. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "You're right." On the drive home, I felt a heavy weight in my heart. The wrapped gifts in the passenger seat were like reminders of my naivety. When I parked outside my apartment, I was surprisingly calm. For the first time, I saw the truth clearly. I wasn't part of a family. I was part of a system that relied on my silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. The words, "no place for losers," kept replaying in my mind. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table, looking at the list of Christmas expenses I'd made a month ago. My handwriting seemed like that of a stranger, a desperate attempt to buy love. I opened my laptop and pulled on my accounts. There were all the transfers for the kids' tuition, daycare, groceries, and utilities. I clicked through each one, the amounts piling up like a testament to my stupidity. One by one, I deleted every automatic payment. It took just 5 minutes to undo 5 years of my self-sacrifice. I expected to feel guilty, but instead, I felt a sense of lightness. The apartment seemed quieter, and the air felt warmer. I made a stronger cup of coffee and stood by the window, watching the snowflakes swirl under the streetlights. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about how to fix everyone else's problems. I was thinking about setting boundaries. By noon, I packed the Christmas gifts into storage boxes. I couldn't bear to look at them for now. They were like evidence of the wrong I'd done to myself. That afternoon, Leo texted me, "You could have at least dropped off the presents. Kids are waiting." I stared at the message for a long time and then simply replied, "No." His silence lasted only 2 days. By the third morning, my phone was buzzing non-stop with calls, texts, and voicemails. At first, he was polite, asking what was going on. Then he became desperate, saying the rent was due and the kids needed shoes. Finally, he was angry, calling me selfish and saying I'd changed. I ignored every single message. I watched the notifications stack up, realizing that my worth to them had always been measured in dollars. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the couch with my laptop. Scrolling through the long list of payments I'd made over the years, I felt a mix of pity and resentment rise in my throat. This time, I didn't hold it back. I printed everything, the warm pages smelling of ink and a sense of closure. I called the bank to confirm all the cancellations and even changed my online passwords. It was a small act, but it felt like a ceremonial closing of a door behind me. When the bank representative said, "All done," I smiled for the first time in days. Then came the fateful night when there was a pounding on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Leo's flushed and wild-eyed face. I hesitated for a moment, but opened the door just enough to block it with my body. He pushed his hand against the door frame and snapped, "You need to stop this. You think cutting me off makes you a hero? You're ruining my life." I crossed my arms and replied, "You ruined your life just fine on your own." He stepped closer, saying, "You have no idea what's happening. You can't just walk away from family." I almost smiled and said, "Family? Is that what we are now? You call me a loser and then remember I'm family when the bills come." Just then, Lily's voice came from the sidewalk. "Leo, stop." He froze. Lily was standing a few feet away, her coat half zipped and her face pale. A car engine hummed softly behind her. He barked, "Lily, go home." But she stood her ground and said quietly, "We're done." Leo turned to her, shocked. "What are you talking about?" Lily looked at me and then back at him. "I met with a lawyer today. I know what you've been doing, the gambling, the lies, the hidden account." Leo's face turned ashen. Lily stepped forward, her voice shaking but steady. "All those payments Rosemary sent, the ones you said went to the kids, I saw the bank statements. You spent them at casinos." Leo spun towards me, looking desperate. I shook my head and said, "Didn't have to tell her." Lily pulled a folder from her bag and held it up. "I did. And I gave copies to the lawyer. You can't hide it anymore." He lunged forward, but I stepped between them and warned, "Don't." My voice was calm, but carried enough weight to stop him. He stared at me, breathing heavily. "You think you're better than me? You think this makes you righteous?" I took a slow breath and said, "No. It makes me free." He laughed, but it sounded broken. "You'll regret this," he said. "You'll see what happens when I'm gone." Lily's voice was soft but firm. "We already have." He looked between us, finally realizing that we were no longer afraid of him. Then he turned, stuffed his hands in his coat pockets, and stormed off down the street. Lily let out a trembling breath. I motioned her inside. She hesitated at the door, as if she wasn't sure she was welcome. I said gently, "Come in. You don't have to explain." Inside, the air was warm and still. I poured her a cup of tea, and the cinnamon scent filled the room. She stared into the cup, as if she could see the years she'd lost. "I should have said something that night," she whispered. "When they called you a loser, I interrupted her. "You were surviving." "I get it." Tears welled up in her eyes. "He kept saying you owed us, that you were lucky to have a family who needed you." I almost smiled at the irony. That's the thing about people like Leo. They call it family when they're taking, and betrayal when you stop giving. She nodded slowly. "He's gone." I told him not to come home. I asked, "Do you have somewhere to stay?" She hesitated. "I'll figure it out," I said softly. "You can stay here for now." She looked up at me, startled. You do that? I replied, after everything, I'm not helping him anymore, but I'll help you. That night, while Lily slept on my couch, I sat by the window watching the snow fall. For the first time in years, my apartment didn't feel empty. It felt like I'd finally earned this peace. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. A man's voice said, Miss Rosemary, this is Andrew Thompson. I'm Lily's lawyer. She gave me her contact info. I immediately asked, Is she okay? He replied, She's fine, but there's something you should see. It concerns your brother's use of funds. I think you'll want to be involved. When I met Andrew later that day, he slid a folder across the desk. Inside were printouts of bank transfers, withdrawals, casino receipts, and hotel charges. My money had been used to build his double life. Andrew said, Lily's moving forward with separation. She's asked me to inform you in case Leo tries to reach out again. I closed the folder slowly and said, If he does, I'll handle it. That evening, my phone lit up with Leo's number. I let it ring and then silenced it. But the calls kept coming. Finally, I answered. He shouted, You ruined my family. She's leaving me because of you. I said quietly, No, she's leaving you because of you. I interrupted him before he could say anything else. Listen carefully. You used me. You lied, and you called me a loser. You've lost your wife, your kids, your home, and your free ride. The only thing you still have is a choice. Stop or sink. There was a long pause, and then a click. A week later, I passed by my parents' house on my way home. Their house looked smaller and shabbier now, like a stage set after the play was over. I didn't stop, but I slowed down just enough to see the porch light that once seemed so harsh. I wondered if they still talked about me, if they thought I was selfish or heartless. Maybe they did, but I didn't care. I parked in front of my apartment, stepped out into the cold, and looked up at the sky. The snow was falling again, soft and clean. I finally realized that the family I needed wasn't the one I'd lost. It was the one I'd built inside myself. I was no longer a loser. I was finally free.